All right. So we've got this excerpt here from Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO. And,
Yeah.
it's about how to disagree effectively.
Mm-hmm.
It's law 3, you must never disagree.
Right.
It's kind of counterintuitive.
It is.
But I think the idea is like, how do we disagree effectively?
Exactly. And it's really about understanding like the psychology behind disagreement. And Bartlett, he doesn't just pull this out of thin air.
Yeah.
He's got some interesting research to back it up.
He does. And you know what I thought was really funny? Was that he starts with this story about his parents arguing.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like we can all relate to this in some way. Like, I've definitely seen this play out.
For sure.
He describes these epic disagreements like his mom would just make the same points over and over, and his dad would just like tune her out completely.
Tune out or like literally leave the room.
Yeah, or escape.
Yeah.
Like go hide somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then later on, he talks about like hiding in his walk-in wardrobe to avoid an argument with his girlfriend.
Oh, no.
And realizing later it wasn't the best strategy.
Not the most mature approach.
No. But then he connects this personal stuff to neuroscience.
Right.
Yeah.
He brings in Tali Sharot, who's a neuroscientist.
Okay.
And she did a study at UCL and MIT.
Wow.
Where they used brain imaging to actually see what happens in our brains when we agree and disagree.
Okay. So what do they find?
Well, they found that when we disagree,
Yeah.
it actually triggers like a defensive response in the brain.
Oh.
And that makes it harder to process information rationally.
So like even if we have like solid facts or, a really well-reasoned argument.
Yeah.
If the other person feels like we're disagreeing with them,
right.
Their brain just shuts down.
Pretty much. Yeah, it kind of shuts down. And it's not receptive to like, the information.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. And this is why sometimes, just bombarding someone with evidence, especially on emotionally charged topics, can be totally counterproductive.
Yeah. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Like climate change, for example.
Yeah.
If you just throw more facts at someone who's skeptical,
right,
they're probably not going to change their mind.
Exactly. And Bartlett actually uses that as an example.
Interesting.
He says that, instead of trying to win an argument, we need to shift our focus to making the other person feel heard and understood.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
It's more about connecting than it is about overpowering.
Exactly.
Okay, so where does this never disagreeing thing fit in?
Well, Bartlett's point is that it's not about literally never disagreeing.
Okay.
It's more about changing how we approach it.
Yeah.
So instead of leading with, I disagree or you're wrong, we try to find some common ground.
Okay.
We acknowledge the valid points in their argument, and then we kind of build from there.
So instead of creating that defensive reaction,
exactly,
we're keeping them engaged.
Right.
And open to what we have to say.
Exactly. Okay, does that mean that we have to agree with everything they're saying?
Not at all.
I'm a little confused by that part.
It's more about recognizing that there are multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
And just because you understand someone's perspective doesn't mean you have to agree with it.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's more about shifting the tone and the intention.
Right.
Yeah.
The energy of the conversation.
Okay. So how do we actually put this into practice?
Yeah.
It sounds good in theory.
Yeah.
But how do we actually use this never disagree thing?
It takes practice. And Bartlett really stresses the importance of active listening.
Okay. I've heard that term before, but what does that actually look like?
So it involves a few key things.
Okay.
First, you got to pay attention to both the words and the emotions behind what the person is saying.
Right.
Second, ask clarifying questions.
To make sure you're really getting their perspective. And third, try to avoid interrupting or immediately jumping in with your own thoughts.
So it's about making them feel heard and valued.
Exactly. Creating that space for them.
Okay. But what about when we actually disagree with something they've said? Do we just pretend to agree?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Remember, the goal is to find common ground.
Right.
Even if you don't agree with their overall point.
Yeah.
There might be aspects of their argument
that
you can acknowledge or appreciate.
Okay, so we find that little sliver of shared understanding.
Exactly.
And use that to build on.
Yeah. And once you've kind of established that connection, Then you can start to introduce your own perspective, but not as a contradiction, but more like as an addition to the conversation.
I like that. It's like we're weaving our ideas together instead of clashing them.
Exactly.
So let's get practical. You're in a work meeting. Someone presents an idea that you think is completely off base.
Right.
How do we approach that?
So instead of immediately shutting down their idea, you could say something like, I appreciate your perspective.
Yeah.
And I can see how this approach could address X. But I'm wondering, have we considered the potential impact on Y?
So you're acknowledging their contribution.
Right.
But also raising a different point of view.
Exactly. You're not dismissing their idea outright.
Yeah.
But you're prompting further discussion and exploration.
That's so much more constructive than just saying, like, no, that won't work.
Right.
It keeps the conversation open.
Exactly.
And collaborative.
And that's the power of this approach, you know?
Yeah.
It transforms disagreement from like a battle into an opportunity to solve problems together.
It's like turning a roadblock into a detour.
Yeah.
That leads to something even better. And this principle can be applied to so many situations.
Yeah.
Not just work.
Absolutely.
What about our personal relationships?
For sure.
Have you ever had an argument with a partner or a friend or family?
Oh, all the time.
Where you just end up feeling more frustrated and disconnected?
Yeah.
Totally.
Happens all the time.
Especially with my partner.
Yeah.
We get stuck in these circular arguments.
I know exactly what you mean.
Where we're just repeating the same points over and over again.
Ugh. It's worse.
And no one feels heard.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
But think about how the conversation might shift.
Yeah.
If you were to use this never disagree approach instead of trying to prove your point.
Yeah.
What if you focused on really understanding where your partner was coming from?
I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
We both get so caught up in our own emotions that we stop listening to each other.
It's so easy to do.
It's more about being right than about understanding each other.
Yeah. And that's where active listening is so crucial.
Yeah.
When you really make an effort
to
understand their perspective, to acknowledge their feelings, and to find that common ground, it can totally change the whole dynamic.
It's like creating a safe space.
Exactly.
To be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And to work through it together.
And that's how you build stronger relationships.
This never disagree thing isn't just about avoiding conflict. It's actually about deeper connection.
It is.
And understanding.
It's about shifting our focus from being right to being understanding.
I love that.
Yeah. And in that shift,
we
open up so many possibilities for growth.
Totally.
Both individually and in our relationships.
Yeah. It's like we're rewiring our brains to disagree differently.
Yeah. And it's not just about external communication.
Okay.
You know, it's about our internal dialogues, too.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you're saying this principle can help us, like, resolve arguments we have with ourselves.
Exactly.
Like when we're making a decision.
Yeah, like that inner critic can be pretty harsh.
I know exactly what you mean.
So instead of beating ourselves up, we can try to approach those inner conflicts with more understanding, almost like we talk to a friend.
So we become our own best friend instead of our worst enemy.
Exactly. And that inner harmony can then kind of ripple outward and affect how we interact with everyone else.
This is all starting to click for me now.
Yeah.
It's not just about winning arguments.
No, it's not.
It's about changing how we approach communication.
Exactly.
Like in all areas of life.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
Not a destination.
Right.
You know, we'll have moments where we slip back
over shit.
Old patterns.
Yeah.
But the key is to be aware of those moments.
Okay.
And gently guide ourselves back to this more understanding approach.
It's like learning a new language.
Yeah.
It takes time.
Totally.
Got this.
And, you know, Bartlett gives this bonus tip in the book.
Oh, yeah?
He suggests that when you're in a heated discussion, you should actually physically move closer to the other person.
That seems counterintuitive.
I know it sounds weird.
Yeah.
But by moving closer, you're non-verbally signaling that you want to connect and understand.
So it's like saying, hey, even though we see things differently, we're in this together.
Exactly. It reinforces that shared humanity.
Okay.
And it creates a more intimate space for dialogue.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So active listening, finding common ground, approaching disagreements with curiosity, it all leads to better conversations.
More meaningful and productive.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive.
Glad to hear it.
It's given me a lot to think about.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, As you go about your day, try to remember that key principle. Disagree less.
Disagree less.
Understand more.
Understand more. I like that.
Let it guide your interactions.
Okay.
And see what happens.
I'm excited to put it into practice.
Awesome.
Thanks again for joining me.
It was my pleasure.
Until next time.
See ya.